Venice, Italy. As a senior solo traveler, I visited Venice for the first time in mid-November and only had a little over a day to explore. I decided to focus on 5 things to see and do, with the idea that I might stumble upon other destinations along the way. I'll share those 5 places, and at the end of the video I will share some ratings and advice for senior and solo travelers. I have also posted a video on things you should know before traveling to Venice and have left a link in the description below. I arrived in Venice by train from Milan, and as soon as I stepped outside the terminal, I was excited by what I saw. A canal runs right next to the train station, so you immediately see this glorious sight. It wasn't easy to navigate my way to the hotel, which I explained in my other video, but I made it, had some food, and set off for my first destination, the Basilica San Marco. It's easy to get lost on these streets, which wind every which way. I thought it was fun to see where each new path would take you. I wasn't quite sure where I was, but thought I was walking in the general direction of the Basilica. I rounded a corner and stepped through this open hallway, and bam! The sight of the Basilica and the Plaza San Marco were breathtaking. I walked across the long plaza, taking photos on the way. There was a line to get into the Basilica, and as soon as I got in line, they closed it down and said no more people for the day. Across from the Basilica is St. Mark's Campanile, which is an iconic bell tower. It was also on my list of things to see, and thankfully it was still open. It cost €10 to go up to the top, which I thought was a bit steep, pun intended. But since the sun was setting, I thought it might be spectacular. And it was. I waited only about 5 minutes for an elevator and was up to the top in no time. And once again, I was struck by the beauty. As you look over Venice and see all these red-roofed buildings, it is so picturesque. I slowly moved my way around the small tower, which has 4 sides. I took pictures in all different directions and ended up facing the sunset. Oh my word, was it special! I loved the way the receding light was reflecting on the water, and you could see the boats creating wakes, which would ripple towards the shore. I stayed up there for some time to enjoy it, as did quite a few other people. So when I decided to go down, there was a huge line that pretty much wrapped around the entire tower. It took me about 20 minutes to make my way to the elevator. By the time I got down, it was pretty dark and the city began to light up. For a cold mid-November evening, it was jam-packed with people. I made my way back to my hotel to get some rest, since I had a full day of touring planned for the next day. The next morning, my plan was again to go to the Basilica. I got in line about 10 minutes before opening at 9:30 a.m. After paying €3, I was inside about 5 minutes after opening. I had been to many outstanding cathedrals, but this one was particularly brilliant. Just about every square inch of it was covered in mosaics. The gold you see on the ceiling is actually little gold tiles, and the flooring is intricate marble or stone mosaics. The Basilica is an example of Byzantine architecture. It was originally built in the 9th century and includes the Palo d'Oro, a golden altarpiece with exquisite craftsmanship and jewels. As I approached the altar, they required you to pay an additional €5 to see it. I declined at that point and just viewed the area from the side. It really is a magnificent work of architecture and artistry, both inside and out. Definitely worth a visit. My next destination was the Rialto Bridge, which is one of the most famous and iconic landmarks in Venice. It was completed in 1591 and spans the Grand Canal. It is the oldest of 4 bridges that cross the canal and is a vital crossing. The bridge is renowned for its architecture and engineering and is divided into 3 sections. There is a wide central staircase that is lined with shops on both sides, and then side stairs where you can take in the views along the canal. I was there fairly early, so it was only moderately crowded, but the crowds grew rapidly as I stood there. I spent some time taking video of the views and watching the boats along the canal. My next plan was to take a gondola ride. My hotel desk told me that I can get a gondola all over the city, and the price is always €100. Ouch! When I stepped off the bridge, I ran into some gondoliers standing by their gondolas, waiting for customers. I asked how much and was told €90. For a solo traveler, that is expensive, but I didn't want to leave Venice without riding one. Since it was €10 cheaper than what my hotel quoted, I said yes and was off shortly afterwards. I told the gondolier that I wanted to get a canal view of the Rialto Bridge, so we went under it first. The gondolas move rather slowly, and when on the Grand Canal, it can get a little choppy with the motorboats buzzing by. I was happy when my gondolier set off into a very narrow canal. This was more like the ride I was anticipating. We traveled under some very low bridges, where the gondolier has to squat or duck to go underneath. It was a very scenic ride. Was it worth 90 euros? I'm not sure it was that fun for a solo traveler. It would have been better with some company. However, I'm not sorry I spent the money, as I would have regretted passing on the experience. Oh, and I did see one singing gondolier on my first night. I assume people paid extra to be serenaded. I have to say the woman had a voice that echoed off the buildings. Very fun. The next thing I decided to do was wander the city. My plan was to walk a loop through the shops and alleys and see what I stumble upon. I wanted to get an overall view of the city. My hotel desk gave me a map and recommended a good loop path for me. I took off in the direction it suggested, but it was difficult to follow the map since there were often several alleyways that seemed possible. So rather than spend time with my eyes glued to a map, I just headed in what I thought was the correct direction and let myself get lost in the city. On the way, I ran into numerous dazzling churches and cathedrals. Here are a few of their facades. I was able to walk into some of them, but not others. Most outstanding was the Basilica Santa Maria Gloriosa dei Frari. It had the most unusual interior I have seen in a cathedral, in that the decor of statues and bas-relief along the walls were so random. There was this modern-looking sculpture, this man on horseback, and then some more traditional altars. The main painting in the apse is of the Ascension, and it's quite a magnificent work. Surrounding it are these beautifully carved seats. I was happy I stumbled upon this cathedral and would add it as a major attraction for anyone visiting. At this point, I wanted to head back to my hotel, grab some food, and set out for my fifth destination. I used Google Maps to figure out where I was and realized I was way off course. It took me quite a bit of time to navigate my way back because I had to work around canals and find bridges. After I ate lunch, I headed out to find a boat to Burano. Now, most people take boats to Murano, but I have been told by two friends that it is a high-pressure sales pitch if you watch one of the glass-blowing demos. I've seen many glass-blowing demos in my days, so wasn't interested in jumping into the crowds. I had read that Burano was a colorful and quiet town, so that sounded more interesting to me. It was a longer boat ride, but I thought it would be nice to enjoy the views from the water. Even with instructions from my hotel desk, it was not easy to find the boat dock. I eventually did, but not without quite a bit of hiking. I found a ticket booth and waited about 20 minutes for the boat, which first stopped in Murano, then Mezzorbo, and finally Burano. The village definitely met my expectations. Like Venice, it is lined with canals. However, all the buildings in town are brightly colored. It is so charming and definitely less crowded than Venice. It was nice to wander around the village, out to the shore, and in and out of some of the shops, many of which were selling glass-blown Christmas ornaments. I only stayed on the island for about an hour and a half. I wanted to catch the sunset on my way back. The timing was perfect. The sun was setting with a full moon rising, and it was a glorious trip back to Venice. I felt like I planned my day well, in that I was able to get an early start, do most of my exploring in the morning, and leave the afternoon for the excursion away from Venice. When I got back to Venice, I walked by an art installation that caught my attention. It was free admission, so I took a moment. Very interesting and striking displays. I had to walk quite a distance back to my hotel, so I took my time, first grabbing some food, then wandering into some of the small shop-lined alleys, which were so enchanting in the evening. Venice is definitely a shopper's paradise. I'm not a shopper, but I could appreciate some of the interesting glassware on display. Of course, there were plenty of high-end clothing stores. And if you want to purchase something in Venice, you can probably find it. Jewelry, handbags, rubber ducks, intricate masks, chandeliers, and hundreds of other places to spend your money. For senior and solo travelers, here are my ratings, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. Navigation, 2. Venice is one of the most difficult cities to navigate that I've experienced in all my travels. I explained this more in my other video, but there is little to no signage, poor communication when taking water taxis or boats, and the roads and paths are never linear. See this video to learn more. Safety, 5. You had to be on the lookout for pickpockets and scammers. There were warning signs posted everywhere. I was wary and didn't run into any problems. However, I took precautions, especially when going into crowded areas. Terrain and ease of travel, 6. Venice is really quite flat, except when you have to go over bridges and then stairs are required. There are rarely handrails on the staircases, and getting in and out of boats, gondolas, and water taxis takes some agility. Budget, 5. Everything was fairly expensive in the city, as almost everywhere in Europe right now. There were definitely ways to save money by eating at quick purchase restaurants and taking public transportation. But if you travel to Venice, just know that it isn't a cheap ticket. Experiences, 9. Venice is a one-of-a-kind city. Everywhere you turn, you see a pretty picture. It is certainly one of the most picturesque cities in the world. I thoroughly enjoyed my Venetian journey. As always, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments section. I have posted additional videos on my solo trip to Switzerland and Italy. And check out the Senior Solo Travel website and Travel Facebook forum where you can interact with other travelers. I've left links to all these sites in the description below. And if you'd like to follow my senior and solo travel journeys, please like and subscribe. Next stop, Zurich, Switzerland.